What's up guys, welcome to another Tutorial Thursdays. Very excited about this one because we're talking about an effect that was highly requested of me falling from the ceiling onto this very chair. So we're going to take a look at the clips that you need to make this effect work, and then we're going to jump into After Effects for the rest of that VFX magic, and we're going to take it step by step so that you can make yourself fall from a feeling, so that you can make yourself fall from a feeling, from a ceiling, so that you can make yourself fall into feelings, so that you can make yourself fall from the ceiling or anywhere else. And by the way, if that's not even the effect that you're going for, there's a lot of compositing tricks in this video that I think you can find super useful. So with that being said, let's jump into the video.
Give this video a like if you are excited to learn. So we're starting in Premiere Pro just to show you guys what I started with before going into After Effects. What you're gonna need is two different clips. The first clip is just a clean play of whatever thing you're falling on or whatever your scene is. Make sure that it is untouched between this moment of this clean play and the moment for where you're actually entering the scene. Because if, for example, I by accident move this chair between the two takes, it wouldn't match up. So to start things off, I'm gonna duplicate these two clips just so I can have a backup of my footage before I dynamic link. Now to do that, you can just right click on a clip, and from this drop down window you can say replace with After Effects composition. Now the nice thing is that if you want to have a composition containing already multiple clips, as in our case, you can actually click and drag and select both clips and still right click and go on to the same option, replace with After Effects composition, and this will do the same thing. It will dynamic link those two clips and it will open up After Effects for you, and you are set to go. Now before starting, one more asset that I'm gonna need is my legs. Since I don't really have a scene or a shot that shows my legs and my feet, I'm just gonna bring in a picture of myself with the same outfit, which I have every day because I only wear black. And that's gonna be a nice way for me to essentially get the legs and feet out of this photo so that I can use that for my effect. And this is actually gonna be our first step. So we're gonna open it into its own composition, and I'm just gonna quickly rotoscope around my legs and feet. So once that is done, you can also, feather it out just a little bit, maybe by a pixel or two. And then we're gonna bring that composition, so not that layer, but that whole composition into our original comp containing our two clips of me plopping into my chair. So just position it, scale it, move it around till it sort of fits. And then we're gonna animate the position of it going up so that it's, kind of matching our fall into our seat. So we're doing this over the clean plate, and it should kind of end up with a few other keyframes over our second clip. So this leads us to another problem. We need actually the torso to complete the animation of me falling down over the clean plate, so it's not just my legs floating down into the shot. To do this, I'm just going to duplicate that clip, and I'm going to right click and go under time, freeze frame. So Premiere is just going to freeze this point in time of this frame, and then we can just essentially mask out my torso and arms lifted up in the air, and then we can then animate this layer backwards to sort of follow the legs so that it matches. You might need to make a few adjustments or maybe even add a few keyframes just to make sure that you're matching those up right. And once you have that animation in place, play it through, make sure it matches up somewhat nicely, make some adjustments, maybe move the keyframes around. And of course, motion blur is going to help this effect, so make sure you activate that just to get an idea of how that looks. And then the next thing that you want to do is match up the color a little bit of the footage of the legs. So for this, I'm just going to drop in a curves adjustment, and I'm just going to lift the brightness up just a little bit. Doesn't have to be perfect since it's so quick, and then make some final adjustments to any other masks or anything that you might see that might be leaving gaps or that might be off as far as timing. So there we go. That's a big part of the effect already done. We have the motion. That's the hardest part to nail down. Now here's one cool little trick that I think you guys are going to love. What we're going to do is we're going to add a drop shadow effect onto the leg layer. And under the shadow color, we're going to pick a color in our scene that matches the lighting that would be hitting our legs. So sometimes we have to, re-click on the color once we've picked it, maybe adjust it a little bit, make it brighter so that it pops a little bit more. And then, you can adjust the direction and your settings, but essentially what you're doing is you're edge lighting this still frame that we've introduced, and it matches up the direction of the lighting that much better. It makes it fit in the environment a lot more. From there, and this is just personal, for me, I felt like I needed a little bit more momentum, a little bit more impact once I land on my seat. So for that clip, I'm just gonna section it off a little bit and play with the time remapping, and maybe even section it one more time just to have a little bit more incremental. And yeah, I'm just trying to add a little bit more force to this impact, just because that movement would be a little bit more violent if I was coming from the ceiling from that height rather than just jumping onto my chair. And then what you're seeing me do here is just pretty much just adjusting the keyframes a little bit just to fine tune that animation. This is just going to keep happening. The more that you look at something, the more that you realize maybe I have to change this a little bit or that. But this is really the part where you have to pay the closest amount of attention to, because the movement is what's going to really make or break this effect. And also, when you're splitting clips up in After Effects and you're doing time remapping, sometimes that percentage isn't clean. And what I mean by clean is it doesn't match up. When you shift those layers back together, you might have some overlap, or maybe there's a little bit of a gap. And that is because you're going beyond the set frames of that composition, and you might have some issues in that way. So try out different numbers until you get close enough to where the layers connect well. So let's start adding some assets. I'm just going to use some debris stock assets that I got long time ago from Video Copilot, the Action Essentials pack. And I'm still getting good use out of this pack, even to this day, which is pretty amazing. Hopefully they'll release a new one soon. So I'm just going to pick whatever makes sense for my scene. So I'm going to think of wood and drywall and just dust particles for this type of room. And I'm going to add it, scale it, and place these elements into position. All right, now here's one of those first tricks that I think will be useful for you in a lot of different VFX. This is something that I find myself using all the time, and it is adding the tint effect, as you're seeing me do right now. It's a very quick and dirty way to match the colors of your scene. I'm essentially just pick whipping whatever's in my scene, adjusting that color a little bit to fit more with my asset, and then I'm just dropping down the opacity of that effect so that I can still pass through but also reveal a little bit of the original colors. And what I have here right now, for example, is a great balance between retaining that real texture and the color of that wood piece or the drywall coming through, while still making it fit with the white balance and the lighting of my scene. So moving on from there, what I'm going to do is I'm going to add another drop shadow effect. And this time we're actually going to use it for what it's meant to be used for, to create shadows. And in this case, we're kind of faking the shadows that these planks or these pieces of wood and debris would cast on myself as I'm falling down with them, while keeping in mind that the light source is coming, for the most part, from that side window that's in the shot. And this again furthers a little bit of that interaction, that fitting the elements into the world even more. We can duplicate that debris layer and we can set that to screen, which is going to make it a lot brighter, and we can add a mask to that. And by doing so, we can make the lighting even directional for the debris and for those assets themselves. And we can also, of course, animate that mask so that it is following the cloud of dust and the debris as it falls down, and we're still keeping that dimensionality by making sure that the right side of these assets have a little bit more illumination, simply just making sure that the mask is falling onto that side of this asset. And again, because we set it to screen, it looks like it's being illuminated from the side of the window. I've also played a little bit with the transparency just to find a sweet spot to where things are blending in even further. We can also apply a mask for the other layer underneath it, so that as the dust sort of settles, we can also bring that mask down. And of course, we're feathering these two masks quite a bit so that there's no sharp edges or anything like that. Now, one more thing that I will do is I'm going to grab these assets that we've made. I'm going to select both of them, and I'm going to duplicate them and drag them below the freeze frames and the clips of me falling, so that we can have some dust sort of coming down and wrapping around me as I'm falling through the ceiling. So it's not just stuff in the foreground, but it's also stuff behind me. Now, this could probably only work for just a few seconds just because then the regular footage comes along, so we can easily fade that out, but at least for the falling down we have a little bit more of a 3D feel to it. And then of course we can add as many details as we want. You can see me dragging in more assets, and you know, we're having some smaller dust particles. Now aside from that, I'm also dragging in some foreground elements, which are just other debris assets that I'm darkening quite a bit with, as you saw in the beginning, some tint effects just to match the color and make them darker since they're closer to camera. It's almost like this cartoonish anime type of effect where you have things in the foreground that are obscured and that are dark. So this again, just with colors, adds a little bit of dimensionality. There's no sponsor for this video, and that's why I just want to quickly mention that I did launch a pack, but these packs, you know, are very time consuming. It's hard to put them together, and it's also a great way to support the channel and the free education on here. So if you're interested, go ahead and check out the first ever pack that we launched, which are some nice vintage light hits that can be a very nice touch to add just a little tiny bit of a little flair, a little something to your shots and elevate your cinematography. Check it out if you're interested. Okay, sorry, didn't mean to interrupt. That's rude. Now back to me falling from the ceiling. Let's jump back into Premiere, where we see that now all of the changes have been updated. So I'm going to create a new adjustment layer, and you know, I'm just going to start playing a little bit with the colors because it is kind of a final piece to VFX because it kind of amalgamates all the colors together, it brings them all in the same color space, and you can really play around to make things fit even more by even just simply adding a very basic color grade. So my process for this is very, very basic. I mean, this is just, I'm dropping in a LUT and I'm essentially just making some basic adjustments in the Lumetri color control panel in Premiere Pro, which I love because it's very visual, it's very simple, and the UI makes it very efficient for you to make these changes with these sliders. So I also want to point out that I did drop my LUT in the creative section of Lumetri Color and not under basic correction. This is just a quick tip because under basic correction you can also add LUTs, but you cannot change the intensity of those LUTs that you've added. So by dropping it into the creative section, you can play around with the intensity, bring it down a little bit, and still make all the other adjustments that you want. And that, I think, is pretty handy. So you see me here now play a little bit with audio. I won't go too much into it because, you know, it's just essentially me kind of jacking up the sound effect that was captured in camera of me really just kind of jumping onto my chair. So that was a good sound to get a real sort of interaction of the chair sounds. And then I've added a few, you know, impacts just to sweeten and just to exaggerate the whole thing a little bit more. So yeah, just add some sounds. Honestly, this is just as powerful as color grading your VFX. You know, having good sounds can really glue things together, and it can really even hide some of the mistakes just because it's tricking your brain by using sounds that can distract you away from noticing some of the mistakes. And there you have it. That's how you fall from a ceiling.
Alright guys, I hope you enjoyed that. If you did like it, please give this video a like, share with your friends, and subscribe to the channel for more VFX and filmmaking stuff. By the way, this wasn't the only effect that was requested. So in the last video, there were two other effects that were also highly requested. One was me punching the palm tree. And the other one was me getting split open essentially while doing yoga.
Now you may just want to stay here for today's practice, or if you're more advanced and you'd like to take it up to the next level, start to extend the legs as much as you can and hold it here. Find your breath. You may want to stick to the first level for a few weeks.
So let me know in the comment section which one you would like to see next, and I will do a tutorial for that effect. With that being said, I appreciate you watching this video. I hope you learned something new from this. My name is Kriscoart for Kriscoart, and I'll see you next time.